Kia ora guys, welcome back to the Black Jersey. My name's Max and I'm the host of this channel. Thank you very much to my patrons who are always supporting me, and I'll just remind you guys as well to subscribe to my channel and like this video if you enjoy my content. Need to get that ratio up a bit. Scott Robertson has been announced as the new All Blacks coach on a 4-year deal that will see him go to 2027's Rugby World Cup. That World Cup is going to be played in Australia, so I better start saving some money, because that will be well worth the flight over. That's going to be very entertaining, and I think they could have a good crack at the World Cup. But the big questions are, is Robertson the best person for the job? Was Jamie Joseph robbed? Should Razor have got this job back in 2019? That's the kind of stuff we'll discuss today, as well as what a potential All Black side could potentially look like if I get the time for this video. But first off, let's discuss my personal thoughts on Razor. In 2019, I wanted him to beat Ian Foster to the job as All Blacks coach because Joe Schmidt had announced his retirement from being a head coach. Warren Gatland had signed on to be a British and Irish Lions head coach once again. Jamie Joseph had extended his contract for 4 more years with Japan. And so my thoughts were essentially down to anyone but Foster. So I backed Razor, as it was good to have a young coach come in. That was my opinion around the scenario. And of course, when continuity starts to get so far, it turns into predictability. Right now, I can name you the All Blacks game plan off the top of my head, so can basically anyone who knows a thing about rugby. You get really fast ball with the forwards, Aaron Smith picks it up, he offloads to Beauden Barrett, and you see what happens. And if you're getting off a set piece, then you give it to the 12, who will just run straight at the opposition backline and expect the 12 to generate the front foot ball all on their own. And that's just been going on for far too long, so a change needs to happen. But the big question is Razor the right person for this job? And my answer to that is I don't think so. Graham Henry, the very wise former All Blacks coach who won the 2011 World Cup, he basically didn't want Razor to get the job over Foster back in 2019 because neither of them had international experience. So his opinion was basically just centered around, right, who knows the system better than the other? So he went for Ian Foster, who had been Steve Hansen's assistant coach. Razor has not coached an overseas team before, as far as I can find. Nobody's ever documented that to me or sent that to me. And of course, I look this stuff up all the time. So to our knowledge, he does not have any overseas experience. At the highest level, he was the All Blacks under-20s coach. They're the Baby Blacks for a few years. Didn't go crazy well in that, but the Crusaders and Canterbury is where he won a lot of his titles. He's got 6 back to back, however many times those backs are going to go. He's been the Crusaders coach in 7 different seasons, and in the 6 of them that he's completed, he's won a title. Jamie Joseph, however, when he became the Highlanders coach, he was dealing with a team fresh off being in Glenn Moore's hands. Glenn Moore is by percentage the worst Highlanders coach of all time, and Joseph was basically just handed a team with a whole bunch of battlers. Yet in 2015, after a lot of persistence, he took that team with no All Blacks at the time in the forward pack to their maiden Super Rugby title, upsetting the Hurricanes in 2015. Then when he came to Japan, Eddie Jones was kind of like the battering ram who just thrust the doors open, but Jamie Joseph was the guy who really took Japan to that next level. They achieved a numerous amount of success under him, and if he can get to the World Cup quarterfinals with a team that doesn't quite have the best talent available, well then who the heck knows what he could have done with the All Blacks. We're not going to know though, as Scott Robertson has of course got the job. The last thing I want to touch on as well is what impact will this have on the All Blacks? In New Zealand, pretty much everyone who's a Crusaders fans loves them, whereas the rest of the country kind of just say, oh no, Crusaders, get rid of them. A lot of people don't want David Havili in the All Blacks. They don't want Mo'unga in the All Blacks. They don't want Cody Taylor in the All Blacks. They think Sam Whitelock should retire. They think Scott Barrett's a thug. There's a bit of a disconnect as far as I can see between Crusaders fans and the rest of them, and a lot of the discussions around the All Blacks seem to factor Super Rugby teams into it for some silly reason. I don't get why fans always discuss that, because I'm an All Blacks fan first and a Chiefs fan second. What impact will this have on the team though? Will some of the current first choice players go overseas? Anton Leonard-Brown, he's been injured a fair bit. He may see the writing on the wall, with David Havili set to retain the 12 jersey under Razor, and with Jordie Barrett wanting to move there as well. Rieko Ioane, perhaps he could set foot overseas, considering Braden Ennor and Dallas McLeod have been favourites of Robertson for a very long time. This could perhaps happen. Perhaps Jack Goodhue could remain in New Zealand to try and get a recall under Razor. Things like this could happen. Perhaps players as young as Tupou Vaa'i could end up going along if they don't necessarily subscribe to the Crusaders' doctrine of coaching and selections. For the last 10 or so years, as I explained earlier in the video, New Zealand has a really bad pattern and a bad plague of homogenous coaching, and aside from the Crusaders right now, every single Super Rugby team has the exact same game plan as the other, as well as the All Blacks and all of the NPC teams. The Crusaders are the only ones who really challenge this and mix it up a lot. What I'm saying is that players who don't quite have the rugby IQ to see past the plague of homogenous coaching might go overseas. Though it's ideal to chop off some dead weight, having depth is always essential to winning a World Cup. France and the recent Six Nations have spent the most of it identifying third choice players such as Sapeli Falatia, Rita Wardee at prop, and of course our Tomar Ramos has moved up from the third choice to the second choice fullback. And who could be in the starting 15? Will Jordan might perhaps get a go at fullback. This will be great for Fletcher Newell. Ethan Blackadder might get a recall. But right now, in the depth of Razor's team, there are a lot of current Crusaders who I don't think should be playing Super Rugby. There's a lot of forwards right now in that Crusaders lineup who I quite honestly think are too skinny to be professional athletes. Zach Gallagher's a lock who's just 102 kgs. Dominic Gardner's not quite tall enough to be a lock. He's not quite big enough to be a 6. Finlay Brewis isn't the most humongous prop of all time. George Bell is a bit of a power hooker. He's a bit of like a pocket rocket, if you know what I mean. A Safo Almua, but not quite as battle hardened, if you know what I mean. This is going to be very interesting to see how it all unravels. Hopefully Jordie Barrett will stick around. I suspect Scott Barrett will be the All Blacks captain, but what about the likes of Dalton Papali'i? I think that's where the conversation has to head to now, as a lot of the players need to sign their contract extensions post 2023. I've got a bit of an article that I'll link down in a pinned comment centered around All Blacks who have not signed their extensions, and those who have, though there have of course been a few updates since I published that article. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. Hopefully everyone watching the video is happy with this new pick as head coach, though I think Jamie Joseph would have been a better choice. I do still believe Scott Robertson will do a far better job than Ian Foster. I want to wish him all the best, especially with the high likelihood that Jason Ryan will stick around. You can also go visit me over on Instagram, my website that I mentioned before, and on Twitter to support me elsewhere. And yeah, guys, that'll be it from me. Thank you very much for watching. From Max.